Welcome to Ideagen TV live at the NASDAQ here in Times Square. I could not be more thrilled to have with me today Matt Russ from Snowflake. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Matt, changing the world. You've changed the world. 20 years in the U.S. government, helping to run cloud for the U.S. government. I mean, I'm just still blown away with that. You and I had a pre-interview conversation, and I just find it to be so inspiring. For you to have sat in the U.S. government with such an incredible role as part of a team. I know that takes a team. And you know what? There's no I in team. I understand that. There's no I in team. And it all starts with the president, doesn't it?
It does.
It starts with the president. And you are now looking at the landscape for the runway into 2030. What are we looking at here? You're at Snowflake. You're dealing with public sector. What does it look like right now?
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
This is a very important set of goals.
Yeah.
It's an important mission. Service is critical to it. And at Snowflake, I help the public sector globally. And what we know is that every day, 800 million people get up to educate, serve, to go into their respective governments. And that's a charge that we take in earnest. It's a charge that we're proud to serve. As we look out to 2030, specifically as that's the timeline that we've set for the UN's goals, the landscape's changed quite a bit, George. It has. So if you look at it, I'm an optimist. I think as we look at it, what we see is about 1 billion people on the move and displaced, unfortunately, because of conflict. And unfortunately, because of many things that are happening around the world. And despite those 1 billion people moving across the world, it is truly one of the best times to ever live as a human on this earth. And the metrics that I see, the metrics that I look to, the metrics I see at Snowflake are the advancements in technology, medicine, innovation, infrastructure. Yeah. If you look at global GDP in the markets, they're strong and growing in many respects. Sure. So what we have is we have two worlds all at the same time. And I think that's kind of critical to what the sustainability goals are really focused at driving impact for. What I'm also seeing, though, is a change. Many nations, many partners, many multinational groups are understanding that data is diplomacy. And that's something new. We can talk a bit about why that is, but when you start to look at data as diplomacy, what it's doing is it's allowing alliances, specifically in trade, to strengthen. It's allowing organizations to have multinational mandates to improve operations, specifically in trade and in transportation, exports, imports, but it's also in politics as well. Yeah. So as we approach 2030, as we approach the impact that these goals have made, I think we're going to have to be nimble enough to adjust where appropriate.
You know, you mentioned so many things, and so I'm trying to unpack everything that you just said. There's a lot in that answer. Did you say 1 billion people displaced?
That's the figures we see. 1 billion on the move globally, and that's quite a bit. And the impact, you know, the reasons are on the move are different. Yeah. Again, a lot of it is unfortunately because of disruption. Yeah. A lot of it is unfortunately because of conflict, but that's not the only reason.
It's not the only reason, and so Snowflake's at the center of that.
We're seeing it. We're mobilizing the world's data, and off of that data, what we see is not only cross-industry, cross-sector, the data that moves across the world, not specifically in one area, but all areas across the globe. All areas across the globe.
And earlier during an interview, we were talking about data as currency. And you just mentioned that now it's also in politics. That's a little bit dangerous, maybe? Or is it positive? Or is it sort of a mixed case?
You know, I don't think so. I don't think it's dangerous. I think it is what it is. I think it's the state of which we are. Yeah. Perhaps I can show and share an insider speak into why that's the case. Sure. If you go back to 1946 and you look at the GDP globally, just above half was tied to, and since then it's been tied to technology. Half. Just above half of global. Okay. And if you think about it, as we've gone, energy was king. We then quickly moved to the internet era. Yeah. Then from the internet, we went into the cloud and the mobile era. Where we're entering now is the data era. And that means something. And the reason it means something is, and specifically, is because data is now an asset. And we all know this intuitively. If you're in charge, or if you're in charge as a CIO, or if you're in charge of a mass organization, one of the things you're most worried about is a data breach.
Hmm.
But if you think about why data breaches unfortunately have grown across multinational organizations, is because it's valuable.
Hmm.
And what we're starting to see now in many industries globally is that data is an asset. And when data becomes an asset, it starts to change the dynamic.
Right.
So we expect no different in politics.
On TV often that they had a data breach.
Mm-hmm.
It could be your local Boys and Girls Club had a data breach. It could be anybody.
Unfortunately.
And that's what's scary, but you're right, because now the data now has value.
That's right.
And I don't think people talk about it that way. I think there's, you look at it like the report would be, there's a data breach.
Mm-hmm.
Data has been compromised, but the flip side wasn't, by the way, guard your data because it's valuable.
That's right. That's right.
And it's common sense, but is it?
I think when we start to look at it is we know it to be the case. It's this truth, this underlying truth. But to your point, maybe we don't think about it quite a bit. And one area that I know the UN has been focused on in particular, in 23, the UN Secretary General during the Data World Forum had talked about the importance of data, had talked about localization. In 22, there was a data focus in Africa as it relates to data markets.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that we see in particular is that localized data is just as valuable as enterprise data.
Wow.
And that's where we're starting to see nation states take not only actions, member states take actions, the organizations that are part of those communities also. But what we're seeing at the same time is the data has value no matter where it sits.
No matter where it sits. Is there a flip side to that as well? And when you say it has value to that organization. It may have value to other actors.
Sure.
Positive or negative.
Sure.
Do you see, just a question,
mm-hmm.
Do you see attaching literal value like markets of data? I mean, I think I know where you're going with it.
We are.
Yeah.
We're seeing it. The UN's seeing it as well.
Yeah.
We're seeing the growth of data marketplaces globally.
Yeah.
At Snowflake, we have a data marketplace where we're helping others of all industries, cross industry, cross organization and nations monetize their data. A lot of that has to do with our design and the way we're doing it. But globally, we're seeing this rise of data marketplaces. And again, one thing that I'm seeing, again, an insider's peek is the localization of the data is of specific value. Perhaps I can provide a few examples.
Sure, that'd be great, yeah.
So what we're seeing is weather data, for example,
yeah.
specifically of a specific geographic region and localized. Not only does that have value to the community, to the broader community, and those use cases you think about with weather, but it also is things that space companies are looking for. It's a value to tourism.
Mm-hmm.
It's a value to researchers within academia. And what we're seeing now is that the barriers to share that data have lowered.
Wow.
And that's what we're doing.
And you can make, I can imagine that, in just an anecdote, I mean, you could share that data with a local community that's budgeting for snow removal.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Something like that.
That's right. And in terms of regulatory, to use your example of local services, you can now use globally available data sets, the best in breed, to now help with trash collection, to help with childcare services and those who are providing it, to help with transportation and food. Again, the barriers to entry have lowered. The democratization of not only the technologies to allow this to occur, they're lowering globally, but also what is also providing with this new data as an asset change is it's also providing folks who have this useful data, cross industry, cross government, the ability to change the world, George.
To change the world.
That's right.
And so I've got to ask you this part of the question, the follow-up, which is generative AI.
Sure.
So you've got this data that's valuable. Now you have generative AI. How does that even work together?
Sure. Generative AI has been a recent focus, especially in the news, especially with technology. And my background in the government, a lot of it was focused on AI and cloud and things such as this. Maybe I'll just make a general statement as it relates to AI. What we found is that AI is here to stay. Mm-hmm. We've been using it for decades. Sure. It is valuable. It will continue to be valuable. But what we find is certain organizations are there. Certain organizations aspire to be there. Mm-hmm. And that foundation is important. That foundation over the past 20 years was cloud, infrastructure improvement then, and where we're at now is where we are moving and normalizing the data layer. And that is the foundation to make AI useful, whether that's for business, education, the public sector, UN, and member states. Again, it's really normalizing that data layer.
And so we talked earlier with another tech CEO here at the summit about Moore's law.
Sure.
Is that even relevant?
Of course it is. Of course it is.
And is it accelerating?
Of course. So it's a law, right?
It's a law.
So
has it been modified?
I don't think so.
Okay.
What I'm seeing in particular is that efficiency and complexity. That's king right now in terms of not only local, but also enterprise and multinational. And let me explain that, and let me unpack that just for a quick second. Macroeconomics are what they are. As I mentioned earlier, of some of the disruptions we're seeing across the globe. Well, one thing that I'm finding routinely, time and time again, when I talk with leaders of government, leaders of academia, leaders of institutions, and thought leaders like yourself, is that all of these leaders across organizations are trying to be more efficient. With that efficiency, that is not only bottom line, but also that's efficient, for example, on the tech stack, of efficient of query, of efficient of process, of efficient of business operations. And that's driving a lot of the organizations. We also see that efficiency also in humans. We want tools that allow folks to come as they are and get the power that technology brings them. And we're starting to see democratization of tools globally.
Wow.
What we're also seeing, in addition to efficiency, is reducing complexity. And I just spoke a bit about what us humans want to see, but that's something that we also see driving in particular.
And I can imagine that as you're seeing that, there's a use case for Snowflake, obviously.
There is, absolutely. And what we have provided and what we're bringing to market is, as opposed to moving data through complex networks, through complex infrastructure arrangements and architectures, what we are doing and the way we're mobilizing the data is by bringing organizations to where their data sits.
Nice.
And that's a change. That's the design change.
Sure.
Right. So even the words we use, such as data share, that indicates I'm giving something to you. But what we're providing the ability of organizations and users to do is ping the data where it sits, to query the data where it sits, and that reduces complexity and increases efficiency. And that's right there why we're not the only ones that are mobilizing the world's data. We're doing it in a unique way. But that's why we're seeing globally these data marketplaces starting to spring up.
And is it a proprietary marketplace? How does that work?
Sure. Global marketplaces, whether they're government controlled, industry controlled, each of those have their unique areas and unique terms and conditions. At Snowflake, what we're providing is the organizations that are on Snowflake, we offer them the ability through public and private shares, the ability to share data.
Okay. So you're providing that access. You're that segue.
We're the platform allowing it.
Incredible. And so, we're here in New York. The virtual backdrop of Ideagen oftentimes is the global goals of the United Nations, because we found that all 193 member states have agreed to these 17 global goals, including the United States of America.
They're important.
They're important. It's not a one size fits all. People come to the solutions that make sense for them.
That's right. And
the goals are supposed to be achieved by 2030.
That's right.
Snowflake has a dedication to the goals because you're in that arena. You're helping to harness this data with and for your clients, your customers. Why are these goals so important, Matt?
Well, first off, you said it. Globally, we have identified these goals as important for humanity. We've identified these as in earnest and worth doing. We take that seriously. I take that seriously. The goals, they're quite broad reaching. Reducing poverty, improving infrastructure and transportation, increasing collaboration and partnerships globally. And there's just a few. What we're doing at Snowflake is helping the organizations, helping the public sector, helping all sectors achieve that through data. Just recently, we unveiled the public sector and education data cloud. That's my charter at Snowflake. And we take
When did that happen?
That just happened in July.
Wow. Okay.
We're bringing that to the organizations in earnest. as fast as we can.
Mhm.
But before then, we had the data clouds in finance, in health and life sciences, telecommunication, 7 other data clouds. And that was all about serving those in those arenas, to use your phrase, and ensuring that they have the tools they need to achieve it.
Incredible. And so as you're looking at this, partnerships are key.
That's right.
And I know, based on your background and where you've been and where you're going, that these partnerships are critical. Why are they so critical to Snowflake?
So not just Snowflake, but who we serve.
Mhm.
Before, collaboration, I think, was a nice to have. Now it's a must do. And that's not just for the public sector, but that's cross industry, cross sector, across the globe. Collaboration in particular in the data era, again, is a way in which value is generated, not only because data has value, but in ways that growth is occurring, in ways that missions are achieved,
Mhm.
the ways problems are solved. And that's quite important. So again, I think a key takeaway is that collaboration, whether it's with a locality, a university, multinational organization, or even member states, especially as we see data as a diplomacy, it's things that organizations are going to have to do. What we're key and what we believe we're doing is helping organizations do that seamlessly and efficiently.
And from your perspective, do you think that we won't single out any country or
Sure.
government or whatever, but is it being embraced?
It is. Absolutely, it's being embraced. Where I see is, and I can't take credit for this term, but what we've seen is fast industries and slow industries. And this is not new in business. And the same is affecting government as well. We see early adopters taking advantage.
Mhm.
Many of those early adopters are doing it because of efficiency, because of cost, because of capability, or in many cases, because of a need.
Mhm.
And
And you're talking about within government,
within government, but cross industry.
across industry.
We saw finance in particular.
Sure.
We've seen it in manufacturing.
Sure.
We've seen it in technology.
Yeah,
It was
of course.
really fast. And we see
Fast and what's the other side?
and
Fast
we
and
fast and
slow.
fast and slow.
Yeah.
Early adopters and those who
Mhm.
are more judicious in their decision making.
Well, and you would think governments are inherently meant to be slower.
Of course.
You don't want to race to something that may have ramifications that you didn't anticipate.
Yeah, George. I think what we're seeing, and I started this speaking with you today, talking about some of what we're seeing across the globe. I think these use cases, in particular, we cannot wait, and then we start to see those. But those aren't the only areas. I'm seeing use cases such as in energy,
Mhm.
in particular, in IoT as that comes online.
Mhm.
Those are areas to where adopters are finding the technology today is providing them immediate value to who they serve, and then also helping their bottom line. What we're also seeing in terms of education, especially as we come out of COVID, is that education and research and collaboration across industries, across disciplines, across
Mhm.
countries is no longer a nice to do. It's a must. And we're seeing nations take that very seriously in terms of not only helping research within their own academic institutions, but again, globally.
And so, as you're looking at issues across the board, if it's a health issue or a finance issue or whatever it may be, you're seeing an acceleration.
That's right.
You're seeing the adoption and the value proposition attached to the data. And so, what would you call that? What would be the word that you call that as we enter this new era? Have you coined that term?
I haven't. Maybe we can do so. But again, what I'm seeing is the era of data.
The era of data.
The era of data. What you're describing, though, I think is unique, not necessarily to the SDGs, but I think the way in what they were written, understood it. I don't think we can solve each of the goals alone, and we knew that they needed to be cross sector, cross globe, cross partners, especially Goal 17 in bringing partners together, and we understood that inherently. At that time, though, I wonder if we knew where technology would go to allow this to be the case. And we're seeing this again as I look across the landscape, as I sit on the balcony and look out, what I see is those early adopters not only understand within their own disciplines the data that's important for them there, but they have to rely on data sets across domains, across industries, across the globe to really impact change.
And what you've done today is you've inspired me to say, wait, we have an opportunity here.
That's right.
With Ideagen to do more. You can't be doing enough of this. You can't be connecting enough dots, especially with where we started. You said 1 billion displaced individuals
Across the
on the
globe.
planet.
Across the globe.
1 billion. You can't even wrap your head around that. 1 billion people. And we have data that's now valuable. We have the ability to understand where folks are suffering and whatever malady it is, whether it's hunger, poverty, mental health, you name it. You can understand with data what's happening, right?
You know, something I think that gets me excited, that gets me up and moving every day also is how now that data is an asset, what that's going to mean for communities, what that's going to mean for people, what's going to mean for the standard of living, especially as not only we try to achieve these goals, but the impact that the goals were meant to have.
Right.
What we have is across the globe, groups, nations, people that can now take value of what they have, mobilize it, create change, whether that's local or that's an enterprise, because the tools are allowing to do so.
Incredible. And your data analysis on the data for the weather
That's right.
was a great example. I want to thank you so very much, Matt Rose. What's your call to action for our global audience, millions of folks that will be watching this interview?
George, thank you again for having me. What you all do every day with Ideagen and supporting the UN is truly in earnest great work. My call to action to everyone out there is share data, use more data.
Use more data. Well said.
Thanks
Matt
so much,
Rose,
George.
Snowflake, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Changing the world, leadership defined. Thank you.